Almighty God, as we come to the reading of your word, we pray that you will speak to us, that you will open us up, that you will give us wisdom. Lord, as we hear the stories of your people, we hope to learn more about you. We pray this in your holy name. Amen. Are there any children who are going back to Sunday school today? Okay. If you change your mind, Miss Lynn is right back there. You can get her. All right. I'm going to be reading out of 2 Kings. This is in the Old Testament. So we've been doing a lot out of the New Testament. We're moving to the Old Testament for a while. So I'm going to be reading out of 2 Kings. It's one of those, there's, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings. Not in that order, though. But 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles. It's in that midst of 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2 books. So we're looking for 2 Kings 5, starting with verse 1. Now, you don't have to read along. This is a story, so it'd be great if you could just use your imagination and imagine maybe being there or whatever. But if you want to read along, you can. 2 Kings 5, starting with verse 1. Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Aram, was a great man and in high favor with his master, because by him the Lord had given victory. The man, though a mighty warrior, suffered from leprosy. Now, in one of their raids, they had taken a young girl captive from the land of Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. One day she said to her mistress, "If only my lord went to the prophet who is in Samaria, this prophet could cure him of the leprosy." So Naaman went in and told his lord what the girl from the land of Israel had said. And the king of Aram said, "Go then, and I will send along with you a letter to the king of Israel." So Naaman went, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of garnets. Now, those numbers don't mean a lot to us, but basically he took what would be equivalent to somewhere between $1 and $4 million. Okay? He brought with him the letter from the king to the king of Israel, which read, "When this letter reaches you, know that I have sent to you my servant Naaman, that you will cure him of this leprosy." Well, when the king of Israel read this letter, he tore his clothes and said, "Am I God to give life or death, that this man sends word to me to cure a man of leprosy?" Now imagine getting a letter from a king who had already defeated you, and then he sends you this guy to get healed. So the king of Israel was beside himself, and he said, "Just look and see how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me." But when Elisha, a man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, he sent a message to the king and said, "Why have you torn your clothes? Let him come to me, that he may learn that there is a prophet of God in Israel." So Naaman came to the prophet's house with his horses and his chariots. I'm sure his whole entourage pulled up to the house of the prophet and halted at the entrance of Elisha's house. Elisha didn't even bother to come out, but sent a messenger to him and said, "Go wash in the Jordan River 7 times, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be clean." But Naaman became angry and went away saying, "I thought that for me he would surely come out." Can you imagine? For me, would surely come out. "And stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and he would wave his hand over the spot and cure the leprosy. Are not the Abana and the Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel?" So now he's being snobby, right? "Could I not wash in them and be clean?" And so he turned away in his rage. But Naaman's servants approached him and said, "Father, if the prophet had commanded you to do something difficult, would you not have done it? How much more when all he said was, "Wash and be clean." So Naaman went down and immersed himself 7 times in the Jordan according to the word of the man of God, and his flesh was restored like the flesh of a young boy, and he was clean. And so he returned to Elisha and all of his company, and he came and stood before him and said, "Now I know that there is no God in all the earth except the God of Israel. Please accept a present from your servant." But Elisha said, "As the Lord lives, whom I serve, I will not accept this gift." Naaman urged him to accept, but he still refused. And then Naaman said, "If not, then please let me take 2 mule loads full of earth, so that I may no longer offer burnt offerings or sacrifices to any god except the God of Israel. But may the Lord pardon your servant on one account. When my master goes into the house of Rimmon," which was a god of Syria, "to worship there, leaning on my arm, and I bow down in that house. When I do bow down, may the Lord pardon your servant on this one account." And so Elisha said to him, "Go in peace." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Now, is there anybody here who's never heard that story before? Okay, a couple of you. It's a pretty cool story, isn't it? The story of Naaman. When I was in college, I'm going to go off on a tangent, okay, for just a second. I went to college thinking I was going to be a teacher, and I know if you've been here a while, you've heard me say that before. I was going to be a mathematics teacher because I happened to be good at math, and I wasn't really sure what else I was going to do with my life, right? And I got into college, and in my second semester, I took a Bible class because I went to Anderson, and it was required. And I heard stories in the Bible that I had literally never heard before. Because there are things that they don't teach you in Sunday school, you know. And so I heard these great stories of the Bible, and I just fell in love with the Bible. And I got so excited about it, and I got passionate about what the Bible said and who God was. And so then, when I went into seminary, I had this amazing Hebrew teacher, and Hebrew is the original language of the Old Testament, who got me super excited about the Old Testament, which is totally my favorite. Now, the New Testament is fantastic, with its stories about Jesus and its theology and how to run the church and those kind of things. But the Old Testament is these phenomenal stories about the people of God, like Naaman. And that's what originally got me excited. I mean, I grew up in the church, but this is what got me excited about following God. And so, for the next several weeks, we are going to be looking at Old Testament stories. And I hope that you can find the excitement and the passion in these that I do. So here we are talking about Naaman. Now the setting of this story is Syria. And in the biblical record, Syria was this major powerhouse. Okay, and we're talking about 700 years before the time of Christ, and a few hundred years after Israel's rule with David and Solomon, so kind of in that middle, like, no man's land. But under the leadership of their king and their great army general Naaman, Syria had conquered loads of neighboring countries, including Israel. Syria's power came from victorious battles and these amazing wars, and all of it under Naaman. Naaman was this highly respected and valued, valiant leader. That's what it says in the Bible. And he had this excellent reputation because of the many victories that he had won. But Naaman had this major issue. While he is this amazing, respected, big man soldier, he had leprosy. Now, leprosy is kind of a term, the catch-all term for some kind of skin disease that was contagious and incurable. In ancient times, in this time, let me give you an example of what leprosy might be. And just remember, this is like thousands of years ago, so there's no medicines and stuff that can cure this. It began as like small red dots, okay, all over the skin. And you get these small red dots. And soon they would start to get bigger. And it would turn like this white, kind of shiny, scaly appearance. Are you picturing this? And pretty soon it would spread all over the body, your hair would start to fall out, your eyebrows would start to fall out. As things got worse, your finger and toenails, we're getting too detailed, you might not want to listen. Your fingernails and toenails would become to get loose and they'd start to rot off. And then the joints of the fingers and the toes and the bones began to rot. Gums began to shrink so you couldn't hold in your teeth anymore. Leprosy keeps eating away at your body, eating away, until literally like you're eaten away and you die. That's how leprosy works, okay? So imagine today someone who is leprous. You wouldn't want to hang out with them, right? Well, back in those days, in a time where cleanliness and those like purification rites were this huge deal, lepers were excluded. They were not allowed in the city, they were not allowed around other people. So we've got this amazing, conquering warrior guy who's leading the armies of Syria, who also is supposed to be an outcast because he's got leprosy. So how does that reconcile? How do you deal with that? I'm sure that a man in Naaman's position had tried everything and probably had access to everything, the best physicians, the best, voodoo doctors, the best everything. He had tried everything to get rid of this leprosy. Except one thing, right? So this one day, this young Jewish girl who was a servant of his wife heard the discussion in the house probably, and she remembered a prophet in her land named Elisha. And she remembered stories about how he had healed people. And so she said, how about if Naaman goes to this prophet of a God called Yahweh and gets healed? Now we assume that Naaman has tried everything else. And obviously they failed, right? So when he told his king about this possibility, because can you imagine the king who is holding power because of this amazing military general? Of course he's going to try anything he can to make sure that this guy gets healed. Because what happens if he loses his amazing general? He might lose the next war and maybe lose his kingdom. So of course he's going to do anything. So the king finds this strategy to send him to Israel to get help. Now can you imagine the audacity of someone who had conquered this kingdom and then sending your military general there to get healed? Just think about how funny that is, right? Okay, so he sends Naaman to the king of Israel with gifts, trying to buy his way out of it, right? One scholar estimated that the value, and I said this when I was reading it, the value of what he sent with him was somewhere between $1 and $4 million. I mean, that's a lot of money, right? So Naaman took all of this and went to Israel, and this shows how desperate the situation was. So anyway, when the king of Israel reads this letter, he gets super scared because he believes that the king of Syria is trying to pick a fight with him. I'm not really sure why, because he sent a letter and he sent all his gifts and whatever, but he thinks he's trying to pick a fight. So he gets really upset, and he forgets that there's this miracle-working prophet of Yahweh that lives in his country. And so then we meet Elisha, a prophet, who says, just coolly and confidently, right? Yes, I can heal this man. But he has to come to me, and he has to do what I say. So the prophet, who doesn't even come to the door, which would be the appropriate way to treat someone with honor, he doesn't even come to the door. He sends out a messenger, and the messenger says, the prophet said, go dip in the Jordan. Okay, now, think of a dirty river. You got it in your mind? Okay, so the prophet says, go to this dirty river, muddy, gross water, and you'll be cleansed. So Naaman gets ticked off, right? He's like, are you kidding me? I came from this land with these gorgeous, beautiful, shining rivers that flow over gorgeous rocks and is clean and delightful. I'm sure it's not exactly like that. You know what I'm saying? This is what he said. And you're telling me to get in this muddy creek of the Jordan River? No, I'm not going to do it. He kind of acts like a child, right? It's like, no. I want you to do something amazing and great. He expected, I'm sure, that Elisha was going to come in and do this amazing, miraculous thing, or tell him to go to the top of this mountain and cry out to God 10 times. And instead, Elisha says, no, just go dunk yourself in the Jordan 7 times and you'll be okay, through a messenger. So Naaman, this amazing, proud, victorious general, says, no, I'm not going to do that because it's beneath me. So then, luckily, Naaman's servant says, what if Elisha had told you to do something great and amazing? Would you have done it? And Naaman says, well, of course I would have done it. Well, it's not going to hurt you to dip in Jordan, right? So why don't you give it a try? And Naaman goes, well, okay. Who knows how long this took to convince him, right? It doesn't really say. We don't have that in the Bible. But he finally says, okay, I'll give it a try. What's the worst that could happen? I'll get dirty. Okay, fine, I can get clean again. So he goes down to the Jordan and dunks himself one time. Nothing happened. And he's probably thinking, of course nothing's happening. 2 times. Nothing. 3 times. Well, this is ridiculous. I can't believe I'm doing this. If nothing's happening now, why is anything going to happen if I dunk myself another time? So 4 times, nothing happened. 5 times, he's getting probably frustrated, angry. He's still got these spots. Now he's dirty from the Jordan River. 6 times, nothing. But the 7th time, there's no power in that water. It's obedience to the Word of God. He comes out healed. Amazement, right? That this could possibly work. And right then and there, you can just feel it. Something in Naaman changed, right? Here he is dunking in this dirty Jordan River, but the God of Israel heals him. Not only did he get rid of this disease, he's given his life back. He's saved. This is a terminal disease. And he's given that back. He's given back his stature. He's given back his life. So still in the mindset of a warrior, Naaman returns to thank Elisha. He assumed that the prophet, like most people, would be tempted by wealth. I'd be tempted by $1 million. And don't you tell me you wouldn't be. I'd be tempted. But Elisha would not take it because he wants Naaman to know that God's gift of healing and grace is free if we accept it. So realizing that the prophet is not going to be tempted by this, I think this is probably like the final click in Naaman's brain that there is something different going on here. He says, okay, if you will not accept this, let me tell you this. And this is what happens at the end of the story. He says, let me take dirt from your holy land back to my land so that I no longer have to pray on the pagan dirt, the pagan soil of where I'm from, but I can pray on the holy land from where you are from. So that's what happens at the end of the story. He is so astounded by what God has done that he doesn't even want to pray on the soil of that pagan land. So Naaman's life is totally changed. This is such a cool story. What do you hear in this story? Power of a miracle. What sticks out to you?
Pride.
Pride. Absolutely. Pride.
Humbleness.
Humbleness? Yeah, obviously. What do you hear?
Proof that God is real.
Proof that God is real. Absolutely.
Finally, obedience.
Sorry?
Finally, obedience.
Finally, obedience. Yeah. Yeah.
He's just like us. We try everything our way.
Right. Yeah, we try everything our way. Why is it that obedience to God is the last thing? Well, we work that way, don't we?
Yep.
Now you know that my 3-year-old was sick. He's been sick, well, he was sick for like 3 weeks. Brett and I were also sick. And I did not share the gory details of that online because nobody wants to hear about that. But we were all sick. I got it first, and Judah got it, and Brett got it. And Isaiah didn't get it, thank the Lord, but he's 5 months old. So he cannot take care of himself. You can't be like, look, we're all sick, just go watch TV or whatever, you know. So Brett called his mom, and he said, Mom, we need you. Please come. Please come and help us. And so she came. Now, we are fully functioning adults, right? We've got all like the staples of being an adult, right? We have debt, we own a home, we have cars, we have kids. We're fully functioning adults, but there are times when you just need your mama, right? Right, overwhelmed, because I can't do it on my own. There is never a point that you grow up so much that you don't need your mom. And I think it's the same with, as Christians with God. Just like Brett said, Mom, I need you. We need God. We never grow to a point, we're not ever so stable in our faith that we can say, God, I don't need you. Now, there are days where we need God more than others. That day we needed Brett's mom and she came. We have learned to function, for the most part, without our moms every day. But there's never a point where we grow to the point where we don't need God every day. And that's what I see in the story of Naaman. I see a man who said, I can do it on my own. I'm this great conquering warrior. I'm this big man. I've conquered all these lands. I have the plunder of my conquerors. And yet, there was something he could not do for himself. There was something that nothing else in the world could take care of but God. And so he finally had to say, okay, God, I need you. So what's the problem? Vivian, you pointed it out.
It's pride.
Pride. Absolutely. Pride is the problem. We think that we've gotten where we are on our own. We think that we know what needs to be done. We think we know how to function. We think we know that we can take care of whatever life hands our way. When things are going well, we get cocky, right? And we don't think that we need God. But pride is not a good thing. William Hazlitt says, pride erects a little kingdom of its own and acts as sovereign of it. A Spanish proverb says pride comes before the fall. And even in the Bible, we see that pride is not a good thing. Proverbs 11:2 says pride leads to disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom. And James 4 says God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Pride is not a virtue. It is a spiritual cancer that elevates our own glory instead of giving the glory to God. Pride says, I can do it on my own. Humility is willing to ask for help. Pride knows it all, but humility admits the need. In the story of Naaman, we have this huge contrast between the pomp and pride of Naaman and the lowliness and humility of the servant girl and the prophet and the servants who told him, why don't you listen? Naaman came to be healed carrying rich gifts and clothing and all of those things. And Elisha had none of that finery, but he had the power of God. Naaman's pride was almost his undoing. I'm not going to get in the Jordan River. Can you imagine if he'd gone away like that? He would have died. Too proud and too stubborn to follow the prophet's simple instructions, he almost missed the healing that God had for him. In Luke 4, Jesus uses this story as an illustration of Israel's problem with disbelief. Jesus tells the crowd in the synagogue, there were many in Israel with leprosy at the time of Elisha, yet not one of them was cleansed, only Naaman the Syrian. The lepers of Israel overlooked the healing that could have been theirs, probably because of pride. And so God healed Naaman instead. Pride is a spiritual cancer, and it keeps us from admitting our desperate need for God. The virtue that negates pride, Casey, is humility. That's what you said, right? Humility. That's what you see in the story, and absolutely. Humility is the foundation of this story. We need God. We just need to be humble enough to admit that. In this story, there are so many places where Naaman had to be humble. Let's take a look at them. First of all, he had to be humble enough to admit he had a disease that he was unable to do anything about on his own. You know that whole saying that, see, this is why I write things down. This is why I write it down, because I don't remember. That admitting you have a problem is the first step to getting rid of the problem, or something like that, you know what I'm saying? Okay. He had to admit that there was actually a thing going on. Because he could have been like, no, I'm fine, guys. I'm cool. And Warnell is like covering conquering gear, and nobody would have known the difference until he was gone. So he had to admit that he had a problem that he couldn't take care of. Confession of a need. So this confession, this humility, and even recognizing that he wasn't all that he thought he was, but that he had a problem, is the first step to the healing process. Naaman saw that his power and his wealth and whatever else he had could not help him, and that he needed help from somewhere else. The second way he was humble is that he listened to a servant girl. This is the strangest part of the story for me. Because later on we see that he is like, no way, I'm not getting in Jordan. But he listens to a servant girl when she says, hey, I know this prophet. Mm-hmm. You know, I can imagine that he might have been like, pat her on the head and be like, yeah. Okay, you know a prophet. But he doesn't, does he? He's humble enough to listen to a servant girl. Then, he's humble enough, well, at first he wasn't humble enough to listen to the prophet, right? But he's humble enough to listen to his servants when they said, hey, what do you have to lose? Okay, maybe it's not the best thing, maybe it's not what you were looking for, but maybe it could work. And so he's humble enough to listen to them. Think about that for a minute. If someone said, this is his problem with it. His problem with what Elisha said was, it's too simple, it's too lowly, right? Okay, think about, what if somebody said, okay, all you have to do to get to heaven is to come up with $1 million. That's all you have to do. How many of us would be out there with a can on the side of the road or busting our tails so that we could get to $1 million, and not only for ourselves, but maybe another couple million for our friends and family? We would do whatever it took to get to that $1 million, right? But God says, no, it's not as hard as that. You don't have to come up with $1 million. You have to trust and obey. You have to have faith and believe. And we think, well, that seems too simple. If I can come up with $1 million, yeah, I can do that, and I'm going to go to heaven. But this, I don't know about this, right? Isn't that ridiculous? Well, that's kind of what Naaman did, right? He was looking for these big, amazing things. He brought millions of dollars. He was going to pay it so that he could get well. And instead, Elisha says, no, I don't need $1 million. Go and wash in the water. And Naaman has the audacity to say, I don't know. I don't know about this. Isn't that ridiculous? It seems ridiculous, right? God does not ask us to do these crazy things in order to receive his grace. He just asks us to admit our need for him. So Naaman had to be humble enough to do the simple thing. He had to be humble and obedient enough to do what the prophet said, even though it seemed ridiculous, even though it seemed pedantic to do it 7 times. Why couldn't it just be once and done? Even though it seemed beneath him, he had to be humble enough to do what God had said. There's one song that I ever found about Naaman the leper, which I showed to Matt and Frank earlier. And it's this great song that was written in the 70s. Go home and listen to it. It's a lot of fun. By Eleanor Wright. And she says, one of the things she says is, Naaman had to learn that if God wants 7, 6 won't do. So we have to be humble enough to realize that even though we think that there is a way that we should do things, God's way is the way to go. And then, and this might be the hardest part for Naaman, he had to be humble enough to accept the gift of healing for free. He could have paid for it. He just had to accept it. Do you know anybody who does not like to accept gifts? I have a relative that's that way. You go to like Taco Bell and want to buy them like a 69-cent taco, and they're like, no, because they don't want to be in your debt. You know people like that? Naaman's kind of like that, right? He's like, no, I need to pay for this. I need to pay for this gift. And God says, no. Just be humble enough to accept it. I give it freely, accept it freely. It's a blessing. That's right. Okay, so obviously for me, the takeaway from the scripture is humility. There's so many places where Naaman had to be humble, had to let go of his pride, and just accept and do what God had asked him to do. I find it very strange. No, I don't find it strange. I find it very understandable, but not biblical, that when everything is going right in our life, we have no time for God. Mm-hmm. It's hard for us to give thanks and to be grateful, but when we need God, we're right there. Naaman was living his life how he wanted to live it. He had everything going for him. And my guess is he tried everything he could to be healed. But God was his last resort. When there's no other place to go, isn't that what we do? We go to God. And shouldn't God be the first place that we go? Amen. One preacher put it this way, has it come to that I have to go to God? No. That should be the first step. That should be the first step. For Naaman, God was a last resort, not a source of power and healing. And we have to kind of switch that flip. Flip that switch. That's what being tired will do. We have to flip that in our minds. Because we think, okay, think about physical healing, but also like emotional healing, or think about anything in our life where we should go to God first. And we think, okay, can I do this? Can I throw money at it? Can I throw a doctor at it? Can I throw my own expertise at it? Well, no, none of that worked. Okay, God, I need your help. Rather than just right off the bat saying, God, this situation, man, I need you. I need you. We're actually a lot like Naaman, aren't we? We all suffer from a disease that is incurable and will eventually take our lives. And that disease is sin. And the Bible tells us there is one way to be cured. 1 John 1, the blood of Jesus Christ, his Son, God's Son, cleanses us from all sin. If we say that we have no sin, we deceive only ourselves. If we confess our sins, God is faithful to forgive us and to cleanse us. Sin is our disease, and we are like Naaman. And we say, God, I'm going to try everything else to be happy, to gain life. And the first thing that we should do is be humble before God and say, yes, I'm a sinner. And I need you. I need you, God, because I can't do this on my own. We cannot get rid of sin by anything that we do. We can't throw money at it. We can't throw doctors at it. We have to come to God and admit our need. Ephesians 2:8-9 says it is by grace that you have been saved. Free grace from God. Not by anything of your own self, not by works so that anyone can boast, but by God, by grace. And it's as easy and as hard as Naaman's wash and be clean. It's humbly admitting that there's a need and that the only way to fix it is God. May I never forget that on my best days I still need God as desperately as I did on my worst. May I never forget that. We all need God. Desperately. Desperately. And Naaman is our lesson. Don't be prideful, but in humility, come before God and admit that need. The praise team is going to come and we're going to sing that song, I Need You, Lord. This is our prayer. We stand with